So what does a powerful Xi Jinping mean for India? Well, we've seen that China has been far more aggressive on various issues over the last few years since he took over the presidency. Is that going to spell more trouble for India in the years ahead? Joining us on the program tonight is Mr. Seshadri Chari, member of the BJP and Strategic Affairs expert, Mr. Jaidev Ranade, president of the Center for China Analysis and Strategy, Manish Tiwari of the Congress Party, also with the Atlantic Council, Dr. Brahma Chelani from the Center for Policy Research is with us, and defense analyst Ajay Shukla also joining us here in the studio. Let me ask that question to Jaidev Ranade first. Firstly, on Xi Jinping's speech today, because he also talked about assuring China's neighbors that they're not going to do anything to hurt them, but nothing will be at the expense of Chinese interests and its legitimate rights. What did you think of that comment, which and in a speech that really didn't make any reference to any specific country?
Well, it's true. He didn't make a reference to any specific country, but what he mapped out in his speech, I think, is a very assertive agenda for China, taking it all the way up to 2050. So, what he has said basically is by 2030, 2035, China will become a technologically advanced and innovative nation, ranking among the top countries of the world. And by 2050, it will have adequate influence to become a global pioneer. In other words, it will be one of the leading nations of the world. The second thing he did say was that he will make the PLA a force, a world force, world level force, which means that it will match China's political ambition of becoming a power with global pioneering influence. In other words, they will set the global agenda. The other aspect is what you spoke about, no country being named, but at the same time, we shouldn't forget the assertiveness he has displayed in the South China Sea, the assertiveness or the pressure that he has applied on Taiwan, and the pressure that he has applied on us ever since he came to office. And I don't see any signs of that being eased once he comes in, because he's going to come in stronger. He's got his own people into the army. He will probably get a number of his loyalists into the Politburo, and the restraints on him, if any there were, will be further reduced. Before
I come more specifically to the points you raised on India, Ajay, just give viewers a sense of how powerful this man actually is. I mean, today we are talking about Xi Jinping as possibly the most powerful leader in the world, even more powerful than the President of the United States. And what it means if he gets another term next time, the fact that his name could be part of the party constitution. China has seen powerful leaders before, but what would make Xi Jinping stand out?
Well, first of all, just to very quickly sort of take on from what Jaidev had said, this is not a forum in which they spell out foreign policy and their relations with the world. This is all about consolidating power and getting that 7-man Politburo Central Committee packed with your loyalists so that you can then have a free rein to run China the way you want. But coming to the point that you raised, he is not the first, and by a long margin, who has taken the 3 key positions of Party General Secretary, Central Committee Chairman, and President of China. The question is, how much more is Xi Jinping going to gather under his powers? He has also used this anti-corruption campaign as a very, very potent instrument, a motherhood and apple pie instrument. Nobody can argue against it, to consolidate hold, to get anybody who he thinks is opposing him out of the structure, to replace it with, unquestioning loyalists. He's put his 4 consciousnesses campaign front and center. He's decimated the Chinese Communist Youth League, the state enterprises, party committees he has packed with his own people.
In other words, he's ruthless.
Xi Jinping is ruthless in the way that he has consolidated power. The question is he going too far ahead? Because when you push too hard in the Chinese system, resistance inevitably builds up. And over the next 7 to 10 days, we are going to find out whether there actually is any resistance, or Xi Jinping is going to just get a free run and become the most powerful leader in the history of the Communist
It's interesting
Party.
that you say that, because you've brought in that nuance into what many are seeing as as perhaps a done deal in that sense. You know,
you can never tell.
You can never tell. Well, that's actually true, because it's so opaque the way it actually all happens. But Manish Tiwari, just your thoughts on what this would then mean for India. I mean, Jaidev Ranade has outlined already the fact that, you know, we have seen a much more aggressive China with India in the last few years since Xi took over. Do you think if he comes in for another term, we should expect more problems?
Well, Nidhi, I think the best headline on Xi's speech has been run by the Guardian newspaper, which says it tested both the eyesight and the bladder of all the delegates who were present in that hall. But be that as it may, I think let's not get paranoid about the whole Xi phenomena. China has seen powerful leaders in the past. You know, you had Mao Zedong, who governed China from 1949 till his death in 1976. Deng Xiaoping, you know, who took over from him, ushered China virtually into the modern age. And even Deng's successors have been powerful leaders in their own right. So the one thing which is a given is that in the Chinese system, every general secretary, who is also the chairperson of the Central Military Commission, you know, gets a 10-year term. So therefore, Xi Jinping, you know, getting another 5 years is really a non sequitur. Number two, if you read the speech or the summary of the speech which has been put out, you know, it really is motherhood and apple pie. It's a larger vision of where they would like to see China by 2049. You know, he's outlined a pathway. But most importantly, he sent out a signal to the world that there is another system of governance which is available. So if you have democracy, which is what we follow or the Western world follows, and the totalitarian or the command economy model which the erstwhile Soviet Union followed, which Cuba follows or North Korea follows, there is a third model also available, which is socialism with Chinese characteristics. And this is for the first time, perhaps, that the Chinese have actually very subtly talked about exporting that model of governance.
It's that's an interesting summary of Xi Jinping's speech, which again, to remind viewers, was 3.5 hours, hence that Guardian headline. But what you're saying, Manish, is don't get paranoid about a very powerful President Xi. I think, Sheshadri Chari, you would agree with that there's nothing to get paranoid about. But certainly, would you say that India needs to be very cautious in you know, how it deals with China and not get carried away? There seemed to be a sense that perhaps even Mr. Modi got a little carried away in his first year in how he was dealing with China, and look where we are today. I mean, certainly Doklam was handled better, but you know, problems on the border aren't going away.
No, I don't think any government in the past at least 2 or 3 decades have been carried away by what China does or does not do. So Doklam, of course, as you said, was handled very well. But Doklam is not an issue that the Chinese Communist Congress would discuss. In any case, I don't think this is the first time India is ever dealing with China. Successive governments in New Delhi has dealt with China, and as somebody just pointed out, we have seen very strong leadership in China, right from Mao down to Deng Xiaoping, and now Xi Jinping has emerged as a very strong leader. And obviously, you cannot ascendancy to leadership in China means you have to be ruthless with other people. On 17th July, they stripped one of their contenders to Xi Jinping's post and slapped corruption charges against him, and we don't know what is his fate. He is either under house arrest, or he is in jail, or his whereabouts are not known. So this keeps on happening there. So Xi Jinping has been able to present himself as a strong leader, and the world situation has also changed after the withdrawal of TPP, US withdrawal from TPP. And after Xi Jinping has popularized his flagship program, that is OBOR, this is the first meeting. So it is in his interest that he trumpets his own achievements. So we are not, I mean, I don't think India is worried about these things. We will be tackling or handling China from the point of strength that we have. And we are also an emerging economy, and we are also a fast emerging as
I think certainly India would be doing.
Destination for investment.
Sure, but
as far as the US
let me ask Dr.
European Union is concerned. So we don't have to be worried about it. But we have to have a cautious approach, no doubt about it.
Yeah, cautious, exactly. Because Dr. Brahmacharani, you often raise the red flag on when it comes to China and how India should deal with China. What do you think a an even stronger Xi would mean for India?
Well, first, let's be clear about this party congress. This party congress, in a sense, is about Xi Jinping's coronation as the new emperor of China. Domestic politics in any country, including in a democracy, has a bearing on foreign policy. If you look at the United States today, under Trump, domestic politics is clearly affecting American foreign policy and American positions on a number of issues. But the link between domestic politics and foreign policy is even more evident in the case of autocracies, especially in the case of China. The international focus on China's rise has helped to obscure the vicious domestic politics in China. The politics in China is exceptionally cutthroat. Xi Jinping has sought to emerge as China's most powerful leader since Mao. In some respects, actually, Xi has made himself even more powerful than Mao. In the run-up to the party congress, 2 senior military generals disappeared from public view, including the PLA's topmost general, General Fang. It's unthinkable that in any other important country in the 21st century, the top-ranking general can just disappear. Xi has sought to tame the powerful military, but he has also gone after the new tycoons in order to prevent the rise of Russia-style oligarchs.
So are you saying that his sort of aggressive, ruthless personality at home and the way he's positioned himself domestically is going to make him more aggressive, even more aggressive in his foreign policy?
In the last 1 decade, and this period predates the arrival of Xi Jinping as China's president, in the past 1 decade, China has gradually discarded Deng Xiaoping's dictum to lie low and not to bear its capabilities too openly. In this 1 decade, China has taken pride to increasingly bear its capabilities, to bear its flaws, and to take an increasingly assertive position on territorial and maritime issues. Now, what we are seeing domestically in China is the consolidation of power, the centralization of power by Xi Jinping in a way that we have not seen since the Mao era.
And I get what you're saying. You're saying something that has already started even before he came onto the scene, Jaydev Ranade. That's what Dr. Brahmacharani is saying.
Now, if I could just take one point here.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
The important point is that what we are witnessing now is the quiet burial of China's collective leadership system.
Exactly.
Until now, China has had a collective leadership system. Now that system is collapsing. We are seeing the rise of one paramount leader. That paramount leader has articulated a vision of a quote-unquote China dream to make China the most powerful nation.
So therefore, what should India do is the question. You know, what Jaydev Ranade, obviously, Shishadri Chadi is right, and so is Manish Tiwari. You can't panic about these things. You can't get paranoid about these things. You have to deal with China in the way that you have to deal with them. But what does India need to focus on in order to strengthen itself? Is it the economy firstly, infrastructure along the border? The army's been pushing for that. What is it that India needs to do?
Well, both these things that you mentioned, but I would caution against underplaying the importance of Xi Jinping's enhancement of his authority. I think Xi Jinping is becoming much stronger, and talking about the assertiveness that China has shown, certainly this assertiveness came to the fore since end of 2007, early 2008, but since 2013, it has gone up many notches, and that is under Xi Jinping. So, what we will see, I anticipate, and what he has said in his speech today, he has spelled out that the party will be a major factor in virtually every sector in China, whether it's politics, whether it's the economy, or whatever it is. Second, that means there will be a higher dose of ideology and nationalism that he will use to pump up the
and that has implications for everything.
Exactly. And third, I would anticipate, to put it in a very short form, increased assertiveness in the South China Sea, greater pressure on Taiwan and greater pressure on us. And here let me just mention one thing, since I've been on the show with you earlier about Doklam. Doklam is not ended. We have seen a withdrawal, we've seen a diffusing of tension, but we are also seeing a level of dissatisfaction inside China, which has not been there for a while.
Manish Tiwari and Sheshadri Chari, just quick comments from you on what you think India needs to focus on. Mr. Chari, you know, as China does what it has to do, what is it that India really needs to focus on? Is it border infrastructure, like I said, really getting our act together on the economy? What is it that we can realistically do to strengthen ourselves vis-a-vis China?
No, I think both are important points. You know, even Doklam itself, there are some experts who are of the opinion that Doklam also is a result of the friction between the PLA and the political class. And when we say political class, there is only one person in China. So it's a friction between the PLA and Xi Jinping. So that is what has resulted. Therefore, this friction is not going to go away for some more time. So there will be some PLA action in the border, which is going to cause some trouble for us. That will vitiate the atmosphere between political to political aspects. So our diplomacy will have to be stronger vis-a-vis China. And as far as the economy is concerned, I think we will have to have our own strength of manufacturing in India. That sector has to go, and we will have to increase our trading partners like Japan, for that matter, Australia or Southeast Asia, Look East policy, Africa, European Union. These are some of the areas where we will have to expand much faster, and we will have to become a production center for these countries also. So these two factors we will have to take into consideration.
That's important, but I want to pick up on that point.
Optimism.
Cautious optimism, but you know, when you say about this PLA friction, Manish Tiwari, do you buy that? I mean, I don't think most people now believe that there is any such friction. It's pretty clear that Xi Jinping has unquestioned power.
Nidhi, let me make 3 quick points. Xi Jinping's speech today is exactly in line what he told a bunch of us way back in 2010 when we spoke to him in Beijing, when he was vice president of the Chinese Communist Party and the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission. So therefore, there seems to be no digression. Even at that point of time, he was focused on a domestic agenda, and that's exactly what has been articulated. Number 2, I think we need to keep in mind that China has settled its land boundaries with all its neighbors except India and Bhutan. Now, there's obviously a method to that madness, but we must, it is in our interest to try and settle our land boundary disputes with China. And incidentally, in settling all those 17 land boundary disputes with its neighbors, China has given massive concessions, and we don't have time, otherwise I would have gone into it. And the third point that I need to make is that rather than carping about one belt, one road, or China is doing this and China is doing that, what is our alternative vision? We need to unveil an alternative vision and put a financial muscle behind it. And the strength we have is in the soft power and the hard power and the information technology sectors. We need to actually build those digital highways, you know, which can substitute for physical connectivity. You know, we are writing a piece on that, and I think in 15 days it would be public.
Okay, Manish,
so I guess those are the concrete steps we need to take.
I think that's just give the last comment to Ajay on that. Ajay, just have 30 seconds on that. What Manish said, you know, about OBOR. Is there an alternate narrative that India can provide on that, or do you think, as some believe, that India made a mistake by staying away from those discussions and should find a way to engage with China actually?
Well, it's, I think, entirely linked up with the Kashmir question. It's linked up with China's relationship with Pakistan. It's linked up with the strengthening of two of India's key adversaries acting in collusion with one another. Personally, I don't think there is any political way that a government of India can come on board that OBOR solution
when you have,
given the way that we have taken it.
Well, thank you very much to all of you for joining us on the show tonight and coming in on the eve of Diwali. We'll see what actually happens at the end of that Communist Party Congress, which, as I said, will end in about a week from now. Thank you very much for joining us.